Welcome to the Voices of Fostering podcast. My name's Tim, and we have a great guest today. We're joined by Valda, who is a foster carer based in London. Hi, Valda.
Yep. Hi.
Our first question should really be, how long have you been doing this for? And do you do it alone? Have you got a partner who you foster with? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Unofficially, my husband and I, his name is Richard, have had many children, whether it's my children's friends who are in problems or my friends whose children are going through difficult moments. So we've had lots of children coming in and out of our homes and mentoring them and that kind of stuff. So we became official foster carers in 2016, January. So we've been doing it for 9 years, coming up to 10 years.
Okay. And you mentioned that word mentoring there. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Right. Okay. So in terms of mentoring, some of my friends, and I'm thinking of a particular friend who was having a lot of difficulty with her daughter. And, daughter was doing quite dangerous stuff and seemed to be having some sort of breakdown. So, during the holidays, they used to come and spend the weekends and the holidays. She would come and spend time. So mentoring her, encouraging her, strengthening her, sort of demonstrating to her, basically, her place in the world and what's expected and how to deal with different challenges at school and just life generally. Yeah.
Could you tell us, Valda, just before we get into it, a little bit about your background? What did you become? What did you do before becoming a foster carer? And your husband as well.
All right, okay. Myself, I was born and raised in Slough, and I initially became working in the legal industry actually as a Girl Friday. That's all those years ago. So I know I'm very old. So initially started as a Girl Friday, which is like an office junior actually, and was very quickly promoted to clerking. Which is going to court with barristers and that sort of stuff, going to the police stations to see clients. And I trained in legal secretarial, eventually became a PA, and I specialized in all areas of law. And that's what I did before I became a foster carer. My husband, Richard, he's done various jobs. He was a barman for many years before I knew him. And, he drives trucks, lorries and stuff, and he still does that.
And how did that step and that journey look from becoming, those two roles that you just mentioned there that you did and Richard did to becoming fosters? How did those conversations between you and Richard take place? What was that journey?
Well, I think generally when me and Richard, is my second marriage, when me and Richard got together and we started to have our children, it sort of happened because, kids were going through difficulty and friends were having issues. So unofficially and without really knowing it, we started to do that. But of course, as my sister-in-law told me, you will never be rich because you spend all your money on all these kids, Yeah, so technically we were already doing it. So it was when she said to my friend who's childless wanted to foster to adopt. And so I went to support her. And in doing that, got sort of spoken to by some of the people that were actually doing, that was organizing these meetings. And basically they said we would be amazing foster carers. Because there was also a young child, my son's friend, who fell pregnant at 19 at university and her parents disowned her. And, she asked us to have the baby for a week. The baby was a week old. So she could sort out suitable accommodation. And we ended up having the baby for 12 weeks. And that turned with her and the baby backwards and forwards for about a year before we could get mum and baby sort of actually living together. And mum knowing how to look after the baby properly because she was still very young. And, like young people do, the phone and having conversations are far more important than the baby who's seeking their attention. So, yeah. So I think all of those things all came together and then it seemed, well, why not? We're doing it anyway. So why not?
So it feels very natural for you. And it sounds like you got into it very naturally as well, really. Could you give us a bit of an overview of how many children you've fostered, how many people you've cared for, and maybe a bit about the type of care as well, Valda, if that's possible?
Initially the first 4 were fairly straightforward and quite short term. And then we had a young person, very troubled. I believe he suffered from PTSD, but he had a lot of educational needs, very violent and aggressive, wasn't able to manage his emotions, that kind of stuff. And, he actually stayed with us for 8 years until he got to 18. It was I felt very much out of my depth, but, I believe by the grace of God, who actually maybe gave me the skills I didn't know I had. And I automatically, so I was told, did therapeutic parenting, which actually made all of the difference. And that's when we started to see some change. This young man now knows how to manage his emotions, how to calm down. Because believe it or not, when children at a very young age aren't getting the comfort, when we coo them and we say it's okay and we change their nappy and we sing to them and do all of those things, and when they're crying and we pat their backs and we rock them, these are all skills that we're teaching them as to how to manage their emotions, how to calm down. He never got any of that. So we ended up with a 10 million 11-year-old that did not know. He didn't know. He couldn't name the emotion, whether it was anger, fear, anxiety. He couldn't name it. So we had to teach him at that age, and for years to come, sort of what some certain emotions were, and then how he could manage them. So yes, that was a difficult one. And I've got another one in placement right now that is pretty difficult too. Completely different in different ways, but it's very challenging. But again, as a foster parent, you have to see them as your child.
Yeah.
And, it's for you to take the time, have the patience to encourage them and support them. And behaviors that have been learned over a period of years is not going to sort of change overnight. So you have to have the patience. And it's for the long haul, really.
And the child that you're fostering now, are you able to tell us a little bit more about the differences to the other child that you just mentioned there, that you had to adopt more of a therapeutic type of parenting with?
Well, I think both are therapeutic and parenting, just in different ways. I was dealing with one with a type of, so it was a lot of anger, not being able to sort of calm down, a lot of misreading, not really understanding the world, and who went through a lot of Proust schools. And in a Proust school, I personally believe they're not the answer, and I think they make the problem worse, because you put children with the same kind of behaviors all together, and they start to believe that that's what the world is like. And then we have the problem when they're old enough now, they realize, no, the world will not tolerate that type of behavior. This young person, again, trauma, but in a different way, and it's affected this child in a different way. So having to deal with a lot of manipulation, a lot of not really knowing when it's a truth or when it's a lie. Maybe going around taking things without asking, accessing material that he shouldn't. It's all of those things. So trying to change that mindset and helping him to understand that he needs to be a child. We're here as adults to protect him, make the right decisions for him. And he's too young to make decisions for himself. He's accustomed to making decisions by himself and looking after himself. But it's having to change that mindset and let him be able to lean back, relax, enjoy, be a child, and allow us to take on the worries and to do the best and make the right decisions for him. So it's in a completely different way. And both of them can be very, very challenging and very frustrating. And you can, especially when you've put in work and you see changes, or you think you have, and then realize, what, we've taken maybe 10 steps forward, but 100 steps back. So it's being patient and tolerant and just keep going.
A word I hear a lot on this podcast is patience. You seem like a very wise and chilled person, Valda. Does that patience come naturally to you? Is that something you've had to work on as a foster carer?
Well, I think a lot of people will say I'm patient. But I think for me, every child that comes into my care that I did not birth, I have 3 grown-up children of my own. I have to start from the beginning because I don't know what foundations, that has been developed in them, because I didn't rear them. So, so the patients come from believing that they're not doing this to wind me up. They're not, when you repeat 100 times, you mustn't do this, and these are all the reasons why not, and they continue to do it.
Yeah.
You just have to think, okay, let me find a different way, because again, old habits die very, very hard. And even though, you might give them all the explanations as to why not, they're so accustomed to doing what they do, they see no harm in it, that they will continue to do it. So the patients come from them. Believe me, I have to walk away sometimes and count to 10, like everybody else. I'm far from perfect. But it's realizing that it's not their fault. The things that have happened to them is not their fault. The way the brain has rewired itself to protect them when they were going through trauma, that's something that the body did naturally. And somehow we have to find there's always going to be a key. And it's having the patience, trying all different tactics, but above everything, it's dealing with the behavior and not the child. So telling the child, the behavior is not appropriate. The behavior isn't right. You know what I mean? But it's not the child, but loving the child, and just keep doing that. And in time, with love and support and encouragement, and, inadvertently you're building solid foundations. Where it was shaky, rocks are starting to form underneath, and you're building solid foundations. And it's only a matter of time before all of a sudden you see a brand new child. It's the child that you've seen all the time, but their heads, all of the cornerstones, all of the bits of the puzzle that were missing have now been fitted, and they're a lot more solid. See the world as the world is, and continue to grow in love.
I could see your eyes light up then when you said you start to see a brand new child. I genuinely could. And I wondered if you could just focus on that a little bit. Have there been any key milestones, massive achievements, or anything you'd like to tell us about during your years now of fostering?
I think, in life, we tend to look at life, how, where we live and the things that we do. We don't realize there's a part of life, there's part of the world where, a lot of people would be locked down if they knew. And I think entering, especially with my previous child, entering that realm, seeing the things that go on and seeing the lack of advocacy for these young people, the lack of actually people putting in the work and doing the right things, created a passion in me. And as a result of that passion, I've done a lot of different things to do with children, parenting, and different issues. And I recently did some training and got accredited to become a Strengthening Families, Strengthening Communities deliverer. And, and it's basically, we're living in a world where children are being exploited. They're being groomed. All kinds of terrible things are happening. And as parents and as adults, there are things out there. This parenting program is wonderful. It's amazing because it helps us to look at ourselves first, understand our foundations, the things that are important and the things that are not important, in terms of discipline, and then start to parent. And it isn't telling people this is wrong and that is right, but it's helping people to open their own minds and see for themselves how they can build positive and a very strong parent-child relationship. So I'm very, very proud the Race Equality Board have taken me on to deliver this program. It's still early days yet. I've just done one. I'm hoping to do many, many more. And I believe that every parent, foster parent, natural birth parents, anybody and everybody, in fact, maybe even in colleges and schools, should be taught about strengthening families, because this is a problem that's affecting everybody. Whether you have children or not, what's going on in this world affects everybody. We need to take our communities back, and we need to be advocates for our children as well.
And I think any personal development that we do on ourselves as foster carers, as parents, is absolutely going to impact the children involved positively. And I guess that's what the Strengthening Families parent situation is about. I just wondered, Valdo, if you could tell us, you work with some very complex boys in London with gang affiliations. I guess county lines stuff is an issue. Could you talk to us a bit about that and how you cope with that, you deal with the children?
Now, in terms of county line, I have had experience of that. You put in the work, and this is what I think families have to understand. You can have very comfortable lifestyle. Your children can have the privilege of going to the best schools, but the reality is there's a world out there that are claiming our children. Now, if your child has a mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, and they spend hours in their bedrooms, they're being groomed. All the things, if you were to see half the things that are on TikTok, our children are being groomed. I had personal experience, and it was a very difficult experience, very eye-opening experience. And I was very disappointed to experience the lack of prevention. We have a police force, and I know their job is extremely hard. But when the children do get involved in county lines or gang affiliations or whatever, and they're in possession of knives and all kinds of things, nothing's done. Okay, they might go to court, they might get told off, they might even get convicted, but they're not tagged. There's nothing to prevent them. And I asked again and again, why don't you tag him? Oh, because he's under 18. But the minute they turn 18, they're still mentally a child. Emotionally, they're still a child. But everything changes, and I just sort of think a lot more things can be put in place to prevent children from going forward and maybe kill somebody, maybe themselves get killed. There must be something. And I think this is a community problem. This is for parents. This is for the community. This is for the police. This is for government. There are organizations out there that have some very solid strategies, but the government has to support it. They say the children are the future, but what's going on with our children?
Prevention there, I guess, is the key word, isn't it? And patience. And I think you've inspired us today, Valda. I really appreciate you being so open and honest about your journey as a foster carer, and I hope you keep doing it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Voices of Fostering. If you'd like to find out more, head online and search National Fostering Group and make this the year you foster.